Welcome back. We're the Brothers Mahoney. This is Michael,
And I'm James.
and we're just following after the last episode we recorded, Space Babies, with the Davies Chord, which is the second episode of season 14, which some people may call season 1, but I'm just not doing it. It's written by Russell T Davies and released on the same day on Disney Plus as Space Babies, which would be for us May 10th of this year, 2024. And plot-wise, a mysterious and powerful figure known as the Maestro faces off against the Doctor and Ruby. The Doctor, though, doesn't know if he can win this time. Hashtag dramatic music. He does win because, it's Doctor Who, bro.
I mean, that's not always a guarantee.
That's what they say. But naturally, we have Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor, Millie Gibson as Ruby, Jinkx Monsoon, who I think many would agree potentially stole the show in this episode, as the Maestro, and a couple of other names worth mentioning. This is Jeremy Lim, who plays a character Timothy Drake, not Robin for all you Batman guys out there. All right, it's not him.
Thor Robin for all the people who aren't in the know, and the comic books was Tim Drake from the late 80s, early 90s.
And this character, Jake, only appears in the cold open.
There was nice to have a cold open back too.
Yeah, that's true. Space Babies didn't have a cold open, which we noticed, but we didn't talk about. But this one did, and it was nice. They also gave us some only Maestro, so we got to see what they were up to, playful stuff, that piano hopping, bra. But Jake's character only appeared in the cold open. Even so, he had a fun personality. I wish we actually saw a bit more of him.
Yeah, he reminded me a little the acting wise of Bernay, who I've always liked as an actor. I've always wished that he could have been a doctor, but that was probably never going to happen. And also, he also reminds me a little bit of the actor who played Horace Larkin. What was his name?
I have no idea.
Oh yes, it was Jim Broadbent, who also I've always enjoyed as an actor. He just reminded me of those two very classic British actors. And I just really enjoyed him in the cold open.
And also, some people may find relevant, though I sort of would say they're not particularly relevant. Playing Paul McCartney was George Capel, and playing John Lennon was Chris Mason. And if you're out there wondering, hey, why Paul McCartney and John Lennon here? Well, because what I did say in the plot is they are going back to 1963 to see the Beatles record the first album, which apparently Ruby is a big fan of the Beatles, grew up in the music, which I imagine many people, not just in the UK, but across the world have. And that is what she wants to see.
Yeah, and that kind of fits in with her personality too, since we know that she is in fact a musician. So that's kind of interesting. One thing that's fascinating about the actor who plays Paul McCartney is we saw him in Doctor Who just 3 years ago. It feels like 10. But he played the character Alfie in Chapter 5 of Flux, Survivors of the Flux. I don't remember Alfie. I don't really remember the name, but apparently he was there. So
I barely remember the episode, to be honest.
I think the episode is best not remembered. I remember it. The most I remember is it was particularly bad, even for the Flux. As Michael said, they go back in time to visit the Beatles, which is apparently, and we'll talk about it a little more in a bit, where Ruby wanted to go the most in time. The Doctor always likes asking, what would you like to see the most? And the Doctor, in fact, did, I don't know if he discussed it, but he did forbid her, not so much forbid, but did say that he would never take her back to Christmas, blah, blah, to see her mother, to see who it was and all of that.
Yeah, and that's actually worth going into just a little bit because we did not talk about it. But at the end of Space Babies, and it makes sense, because Space Babies was, generally speaking, such a horrendous episode. I did say I didn't talk about it much. But this is important. At the end of the episode, there's sort of like an ultimatum that the Doctor gives Ruby after he gives her the TARDIS key, saying that, hey, we cannot go back to you being left, abandoned on Christmas. We can't go back to that memory, or we can't go back there, and we're just forbidden from doing so. And Ruby sounded like she was trying to convince him to do so, but that didn't really go anywhere, at least right there. Well, I guess just convincing him to just go back to Christmas with, I guess, who she sees as her real mother right now. But point being, at this current time, she is not being allowed to go back to or being abandoned as a baby.
Which seems fair considering what happened when he took Rose to see her father.
Yeah, I would say that's probably not an unwise choice. Though I also think it's fair to say that I'd be surprised if she didn't go back there at some point during these next 6 episodes.
Yeah, it's going to happen. I mean,
I mean, either she goes back there or the snow comes to her. I mean, it happens that way.
Apparently the snow keeps coming to her anyway. Or maybe it's psychic snow like we had in the snowman. But anyway, snow that remembers, I believe was the line. Anyway, I thought it was actually pretty funny when she started, she wanted to go see the Beatles. Because the doctor's like, oh, that's brilliant, with his normal and Fox's personality. Most people, they say, oh, what was the line? Most people only say Mouse or some other place, I forget exactly where. And then he says, some people even say Bethlehem. But the Beatles, no, that's cool. I thought that was hilarious. I don't think it was intentional, but it reminded me automatically. Our father was a big fan of the Beatles, and granted, I don't think he ever talked about this part, but it's still funny because you know, if you know the history, John Lennon once caused a major controversy when on I believe it was not a talk show, but one of those evening shows like David.
I actually thought it was a print interview. But...
Oh, maybe it was a print interview. I don't remember. Either way, he said publicly that he wasn't so who was more popular, the Beatles or Jesus. And in fact, I think he even claimed that, or I think the quote might be right here, Christianity will go, it will vanish and shrink. We're more popular than Jesus now. I don't know what should go first, rock and roll or Christianity. And as you can imagine, to the more nutcase people, especially in the United States...
Well, I was going to say, because I read a little bit about this before we recorded. When that was published in the UK, no one cared.
Yeah, because it's the UK.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a couple people like, oh, hey, that's not cool, bro. But when it got over to the US, there's more, especially in the Bible part of this country. I mean, like the rockets were being born, the songs just stopped being played on the radio. All this hoopla about it. It's just fun times.
It's exactly what you'd expect from the that branch of Christianity that is extremely stupid, which is a nice way of saying it as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know. I again, it probably wasn't intentional. I just thought it was hilarious that even the doctor's like, yeah, why go to Bethlehem when you go see the Beatles? Which is basically what it came down to. You see, he was just extremely jazzed to go see them. Like he dressed up extremely soapily. He looked gold.
Well, yeah. Also, it's just. He and Ruby couldn't seem to stop dancing too. They're just walking down those ramps. They're just so excited.
They're like dancing down the ramps because they're all so excited to go see the Beatles. They have crossed the famous Abbey Road, which was the cover for the Abbey Road album. I'd say very well known, but honestly, most of the album. Who knows Rubber Soul? Who knows Revolver? I think it's really only the last few albums that are extremely well known, at least in common. To the common person, if you ask them to name them on the street. I really don't think Revolver will get named after them. You know, so they were just extremely excited to go see the Beatles, and then they did, and they got some amazing music, didn't they, Michael?
Well, that they did. So, yeah, the Beatles' music is maybe not up to contemporary standards. And to be fair, all the Beatles sort of is simplistic. Like, I think, was it Love Me Do only uses like such a small amount of words in the whole song. Just some of all the music is sort of repetitive. It's sort of simplistic. I'm not saying it's not good because I enjoy quite a bit of it, but it has a very different feel than the later music. But the music that the Beatles are playing here doesn't pack the emotional range that you might even expect of, like, I want to hold your hand or something. This is just a bit different.
I forget the specifics, but I believe it's something like, I have a dog.
If you want a dog, go get your own dog. It's
pretty good stuff.
And unfortunately, it's not just the Beatles, but Cilla Black, who she's a British singer I know pretty much only from a single song, which is Everything I Touch Turns to Tears, which is a fantastic song. She has a fantastic voice. But I know that she was a really big singer in the 60s in the UK. But her music isn't particularly popping either. And well, as you can imagine, the Doctor and Ruby are sort of horse track. Seems like it's like they don't have music. I mean, they sound like the episode, oh, it's a world without music. No, they have music. They're literally in the recording studio. The Beatles are making songs, but a lot of the creativity and how it seems to be absent from music. No one seems really interested or passionate in making legitimately good music.
Yeah, music for its own sake instead of just making music to get on with your life.
Yeah, and well, naturally, that is not ideal. And that all comes back to the mysterious and powerful figure we mentioned before, the Maestro. again played by Jinkx Monsoon.
Yeah, the Maestro, it's hard to tell with entities of this range, but says that they are the. Did they use the term Doctor? Yeah, I think it was Doctor. That they are the Doctor of the toy maker, which we saw pretty recently. And in fact, I don't know if maybe the Doctor is theorizing this, but was part of the Pantheon. And I would assume the Pantheon are these extremely powerful figures like the toy maker and the Maestro, who are literally things that can bind reality to its very core.
Yeah, and it's on that note that the Maestro, I think, really helped this episode because we saw early on in the cold open the guy James mentioned, Timothy Drake, who was played by Jeremy Lim. He played, I think, something called not the title of the episode, the Davies Code, and it sort of somehow brought this entity, the Maestro, here, and they sort of popped out of the piano, and then sort of sucked out music from that character, and that happened, I think, about 1925 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 25. I mean, I will point out, I don't know if he actually did bring them into existence because they were lured though by a kid who was a seeming creation of them already.
I guess they're already there, but they needed to be more there. God, Mountain of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. Boy, we're not there yet, and it's not the place for this. But I had some issues with that. But yeah, long story short, apparently, ever since 1925, at least right now, music hasn't been done for like joy or passion. It's just been done to be done, and like James said, to move on with their lives. So it's been that way for like, I guess, 40 years now since we are in 63. And this Maestro, long story short, the Doctor has a piano brought up to the roof, so Ruby can play piano for a bit, and I guess potentially bring the joy of music back.
Well, I think he wanted to see what was going to happen. Because there's a strange encounter in the lunchroom of in the cafeteria of the studio.
Yeah, which at the time EMI Studios, but I think it's of course later Abbey Road Studios.
So the Doctor is trying to talk to Paul McCartney to try to get through to him. Hey, music, it actually matters. And then I think Paul McCartney starts humming or vocalizing, and then everybody goes quiet. And was it quite clear to me? I guess with the way the episode played out, the Doctor didn't actually see this, but
pretty much an every reflective surface beside the Maestro's face, like
it was
in glass
like
and spoons and stuff.
Yeah, and a spoon that was strapped into the ground in the glass windows of the studio. It was like again, the Doctor didn't notice it. I suppose it was just extremely creepy, and
yeah, it was creepy. It sort of had a horror movie vibe to it, and in fact, throughout the episode, the Maestro with the whole reality bonding amount of power really seemed to have like a Pennywise vibe, which I think worked out. I mean, it wasn't quite as vicious as Pennywise was, but had like a gleeful nature doing what they do and such. I guess that's always nice to see.
Yeah, it's nice to see somebody enjoying what they do. But I mean, yes, partially with the new adaptations of Pennywise from those movies, and also not only just the reality bonding, but seeming completely inhuman as well, which was something that was done well in those movies, and something this character does well here. Because just the way they were acting and everything, the way they would speak, everything they did, it was interesting because much like as we would expect with maybe a character like this, there was no even attempt at a scientific explanation. They were just literally a reality bonder. Again, much like the Toymaker was a reality bonder. And in fact, throughout this, the Doctor was basically saying, I can't fight this. Yeah, according to the Doctor, when it comes to the gods, you only get one trick to beat them. So the Doctor not dealing with things like these all that often, although I guess you're about to get used to it the way the universe looks now. Wasn't really looking forward to trying to deal with this entity.
Yeah, and I think one of the creepiest scenes in the episode was before the first encounter when the Ruby's playing piano, and like I said, she's playing the piano on the rooftop, and the Maestro just sort of crawls out of that piano, and it's sort of horror movie-esque, sort of spooky-ish. Now, because of the personality of the Maestro, it's not exactly like horrific, but it is a bit creepy. I've never played piano, and after watching this, I'm not sure I want to play piano. It's just not me.
It could, of course, been done in a more creepy way if the episode had been set up that way, but I mean, it's pretty good as it was anyway. And yeah, I think that was a pretty good scene on the whole, because was it right before that scene? Or was it right after? I think it had to have been right before that scene. The Doctor's talking to Ruby, and Susan, his granddaughter, actually gets name dropped. Which I really feel, maybe it's not, but to me it feels like it's the first time in the entire Revival series that Susan was actually name dropped.
Yeah, and this sort of actually, in my view, ties in with what we talked about with Space Babies, another bit of exposition, because when they landed in 1963, the Doctor is telling Ruby, like, oh, hey, I'm over there in Shoreditch with my granddaughter. And of course, Ruby's like, wait, you had a granddaughter? Wait, you were here in the 60s? And naturally, that all goes back to William Hartnell era of Doctor Who, which, like even if you watched some New Who, you're probably familiar with William Hartnell's era, but if you really are just jumping on with this era of Doctor Who, you may be ill-informed about earlier classic Who. So I thought that was nice. And like James said, naming Susan by name, or talking about Susan by name. And then I think that the biggest thing was admitting that apparently he does not know where she is.
Yeah, the way that he was talking was, he, again, mentioned genocide 2 episodes in a row. And without talking about the Israelis, that's amazing. Free Palestine. But according to him, the genocide might have... I'm assuming he's talking about the genocide done by the Maestro. And I still don't know how the Maestro is able to manage it. I don't know how you destroy an entire planet of Time Lords. But whatever. Not like Tim the one to explain it. But as part of the course, Russell T Davies is already doing more with that than Tim even thought about doing. With the Doctor having actual reactions to the events. He actually did it with the Flux pretty well in The Gaggle, and also in Wild Blue Yonder. And now he's having the Doctor talk about the genocide of his people, which I'm guessing that would never even came to Chibnall's mind when he wrote those episodes. But according to the Doctor, he's not so... Well, maybe he is so, but he thinks the genocide trickled throughout time as well, and I don't know how the Master can do that. So he doesn't even know if Susan's alive anymore. And with Susan getting literally name dropped after talking about not knowing if she's alive or not, there's a lot of theories flying around, and I don't like this podcast to be talking about theories other people come up with, but there's a lot of theories around that she might be coming back in one way or another. And with her getting name dropped like that, I think it's right now 200% more likely than it was previously.
And also, we have, I think, another thing that maybe got buried in the lead. After the Doctor and Ruby first encounter the Maestro, and the Doctor is sort of like, he goes through the whole, oh, I don't know if I can actually defeat this. Like, this is beyond, like, last time I tried to go against the Toymaker, I got, like, split in half. So I'm not sure if I can do this again so soon. So, yeah, he's having problems. Ruby actually says the exact same thing Rose did in The Unquiet Dad. Like, saying, like, well, I know that music did stop being fun in the 1920s. I see phrased a different way. But she knows, she lived, she knew that there was music by the Beatles that she listened to growing up. So obviously nothing happened in the 60s, or else she would have remembered that. So the Doctor decides to take her to present day, which is apparently, according to Ruby, June 2024. And if you're wondering why that's a big deal, at the end of Space Babies, the Doctor and Ruby went back to Ruby's adopted mother for Christmas. And so that would have been Christmas 2023. So apparently Ruby has been traveling with the Doctor now for like 6 months.
Yeah, I don't know. It's extremely confusing. And I have to assume it's intentional, one way or the other. Either it's intentional in a way where they say, oh, look, they've been traveling 6 months together. We don't need to show any relationship between them. It would be like doing the Chibnall thing, where, oh, look, Ryan, Yaz, and that one guy were traveling together for a whole year in the 1920s. So we don't need to show how friendly they are. We can just show that they are. And so that would be the Chibnall route to take. But maybe it's actually intentional. And with the way that the series has been written since Wild Blue Yonder, our fingers crossed about it being intentional. Now, granted, they didn't do the thing I was really going to hope they would do and have the Toymaker involved in the 14th Doctor's face coming back, or the 10th Doctor's face coming back for the 14th Doctor. But I can still hope that this is all these strange things that have been happening is intentional. I mean, the Doctor obviously has made reference to the fact that he opened the floodgates to the universe, or however he phrased it, when it came to the South and Wild Blue Yonder. And obviously, since then, we've had the Toymaker, we've had goblins that don't seem like they were aliens, they were just goblins. And we had the Maestro. And then we have the one who waits, showing up. We have the oldest one. These entities have extreme power that aren't so much alien as interdimensional. And as Michael said earlier, literally reality bonding. So, I don't know, I think I have to assume Russell T Davies has a plan. Well, I have no clue what it's going to be in the end, but with only 6 episodes left in the season, which is amazing, I wish him the best of luck to be able to tell the story he wants to tell. But back to this specifically, I don't really know how to conceive of this, because time travel in the TARDIS is how to conceptualize anyway. Like, if you're traveling in the TARDIS as people used to do, companions used to do, just you out there, you're in the TARDIS basically from then until you leave. How long are you actually there? You can't count it by the years from the way you came from. You're no longer within a time like that. You can only keep track, I guess, with a diary or something of how long you've actually been experiencing that time. For example, there are some versions of Ace that literally traveled with the Doctor for 10 years or so, or thereabouts, which is a huge chunk of time. Then, of course, when it came to, I believe it was season 6, Matt Smith, of course, was traveling with Amy and Rory. Then he lets Amy and Rory off to have the house. And then throughout the next few seasons, the Doctor, as Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi, kind of just come in and out of people's lives. They come for an adventure, then they leave again, which makes it easier for them to keep track of time, of their own life. But it's still hard because how old are they? Because they spend that time traveling with the Doctor. I believe Amy and Rory said in their own time, they spent 10 years of their life with the Doctor, which is, again, fascinating to conceive of. But so what that means in this case is either the Doctor's doing that route with Ruby, where he's doing his own things and he's coming to meet Ruby periodically, and she's staying her main life, living it normally insofar as she can, starting from December 2023 on to June, July 2024. Or she's been traveling with the Doctor in a non-stop way, but just herself checks in periodically. I don't know, maybe weeks at a time. I don't know, it's extremely complicated because they were able to get it around this in the 4th season by the Doctor having just made the mistake, and the Rose lost an entire year of her life in terrestrial terms.
I'll just say all of this could have been short-circuited if they had just shown. I would have liked it. I would have criticized this too, but if they had shown like a montage of adventures to show that, hey, time has passed, like I said, I would have liked it, but at least they would have made this make more sense than what it just ends up. It comes out of nowhere. I mean, it's one of those lines that people might not even notice. I mean, I know some people watch this and didn't even never hit them, but I'm like, oh, hey, that seems really strange. So I guess the Doctor and Ruby have been traveling for 6 months, and
this is the first time the Doctor's inquired, and this Doctor's extremely friendly. So this is the first time he's inquired, hey, where would you really like to go? And that doesn't seem likely. The thing is that it was written in, some people say online, oh, well, could it be Christmas 2023 forever? I'm like, then write it in a better way. Like, explain it. Because right now, I don't know what's actually going on in Ruby's life. I don't get it. Did Ruby just tell her grandmother, hey, I'm going off on vacation, I'll see you in 6 months? I don't know. I mean, she is a musician. It didn't look like they were touring or anything, but did she just tell her band, hey, guys, you need to get a new pianist or a new, I don't know what else she might have done.
Keyboardist, probably.
Oh, yeah, it was keyboard, wasn't it? I'll see you guys later. Again, it was written in the episode. Fingers crossed it'll actually be brought up, and they'll give some type of explanation. What type of explanation, I don't know, but I'd be interested to know what it would be.
And it's because of that discussion, the Doctor brings Ruby to 2024, and it's like this wasteland. Apparently, without music, there's no outlet for like negative emotion, or just really any emotions. No outlet for heartbreak and such. So people just turn to nuclear weapons, and it seems like the world's been wiped out largely. Then after, naturally, the Maestro pops up just to like be spooky, because that's how they do. And it's actually during that scene that we find out that the Maestro is apparently, at least according to them, the daughter of the toy maker. I think what was the line like, "Oh, you bound my father in salt" or something like that. They're sort of playful.
Yeah, something akin to that. It's kind of funny because the Doctor actually wasn't quite involved in that decision. We see Kate Lethbridge Stewart say to one of her unit people, "Take this, the box that the Toymaker was banished into, and go bind it in salt," which is funny. And technically speaking, they are right that the Doctor was part of the Toymaker being bounded in salt. As it is, they were actually rather upset about it. They just did a small little singing thing about how they weren't a very good father. Yeah, I don't know. It's when you get to creatures like this at this high type of level, again, like they're not human. They you can really expect how they're going to react to things like this, and they just didn't seem to care at all on the whole. So they had their own type of plan where they wanted to destroy not just Earth. That was only a stepping stone. They wanted to slowly amass more power and then basically destroy our life in the universe so they could hear the music of the spheres, which ironically enough was a name of some 10th Doctor's parcel, which I never actually knew all that much about. But the sound of the spheres is a name of a 10th Doctor thing, so that's kind of fun. Yeah, the Doctor does make a reference to what the Toymaker said, that his legions are coming. So I guess, doubt it or not, this is going to be one part of that legion. I know it's happening sooner than you'd expect, but then again, it's only 8 episodes this season, so they don't really have all that much time to play around with.
Yeah, and there are other references to, like, again, the one who waits, and I believe the Maestro makes a reference to the oldest one. I don't have the quote in front of me, but just more things that we just don't know, just more... it's not clear to me if the oldest one and the one who waits are the same. It could be entirely different figures. I have no idea. And it's just one of the things that we will hope that will get sort of uncovered throughout the next 6 episodes.
Well, to be fair, this is like Russell T Davies' trademark. This is how he does his story plots. He throws a name, Torchwood, Bad Wolf, and then he keeps repeating it until he decides he wants to explain it. That's how he works. And another thing that was interesting, just as a small aside, that scene where the Doctor took Ruby into the future was actually extremely reminiscent of course, Pyramids of Mars, where basically the same exact thing happens with the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane. And in fact, like maybe because it's been referenced so clearly, maybe that means Sutek's maybe the one who waits instead of Finrick. I'm not really sure, but I know he's certainly planning something that's interesting. Because this episode had a ton of fourth wall breaks, not just from the Maestro, which you'd probably expect that from, but also with the Doctor himself. At one point, he makes a reference to music that's playing, and then when he realizes that's actually happening, he says something to the effect of, "Oh, that's not diegetic, is it?" A reference to the fact that music that plays during a scene in a show or a movie, but it's just over the scene and not actually in the scene, is referred to as diegetic music or non-diegetic, whichever way it goes. So apparently the Doctor is cognizant enough, has knowledge enough to know if music's actually playing over scenes that he's in, which is, honestly, in some ways, this writing is reminding me of what has happened in comic books around the 2010 era, where with stories that are branching out higher and higher, not just to a multiverse, but to almost quote-unquote real life, where some characters are starting to become aware that they're fictional characters in some context, which Grant Morrison is somebody who does this a lot. Writing that tries to break the bounds of what people thought comic books could do. This is reminding me a lot of that. Also, in a lot of ways, a much more tame version of Rick and Morty, where on some levels, Rick is completely aware that he's a fictional character because he makes asides and meta references all the time in that show. That show comes with a lot of good and a lot of bad, and some writers who want to test the bounds of what they're writing in do go to this route, where they go and have people make meta references, where they go and have knowledge of the constraints of the reality they're in start to break down and start to appeal to the characters themselves. Even at the end of this episode, after they deal with the Maestro, it goes into a musical bit with it. I don't know, where the Doctor seems almost aware that it's a musical bit. It's bizarre because things like this are not let me rephrase this, things like this were not common in Doctor Who in the past. And yeah, some people point to the Peter Capaldi opening in Before the Flood, but I always, personally, to make myself like that scene more, because I actually don't tend to like meta references and breaking the fourth wall. If you remember, I actually complained a lot about the character Mrs. Flood doing it, although maybe that was a harbinger of things to come, because things like this don't just happen. I can't imagine this is just Russell T Davies having fun. I think things like this, when it happens, especially when it's never happened before, I think there's a purpose to it. But I've always explained to myself when it comes to that Peter Capaldi part, that the Doctor was just explaining it to Clara after the fact, because at the very end of the episode, he says to Clara, well, who wrote Beethoven's Fifth? And so I think in my mind, okay, at the beginning of the episode, it's just then him explaining it to Clara. No, it doesn't quite work, but that's what I like to imagine anyway.
Yeah, and the musical portion at the end was, I would imagine to some people, off-putting is not really the right word I'm looking for, but it just doesn't necessarily feel like it fits in. I personally think the final battle between the Doctor and Ruby and the Maestro is sort of weak. Like, I was sort of hoping for, I guess, a different approach to it. Like, maybe the musicians or the people from the 60s come together to actually make music and have them overcome the Maestro's power, as opposed to just being like, it was either John Lennon and Paul McCartney, one of them figuring out the last note to hit and just banishing the Maestro. It just felt sort of weak to me. But then we get to the whole ending thing where there's a song, which is, there's always a tryst at the end. But the song itself doesn't have any tryst in it. They weren't referencing any tryst.
Well, to be fair, they weren't referencing a twist, but there was a tryst in the song, and you noticed it at the time, and then we went back to clarify. But during the musical part, which is actually kind of catchy, not too bad choreography, it's not high level, but it wasn't bad. I don't mind the musical, I just don't like it into Chinese Doctor Who for no reason. There was the kid from the very beginning. We mentioned previously that the Maestro kind of lured.
Yeah, and that goes to, there's a kid who lured someone. I just don't see it as a tryst. Like, this reality bonding thing isn't really that. I just, that's not a tryst to me. The whole thing, I thought it was interesting, like, choreographed nicely. Like, I'm a big fan of Grease, classic musical from the late 70s. And this reminded me a lot of that, just same dance, and it just looked a lot more clean. It's like obviously filmed in, either this year or last year. But it looked a lot like that. And the dancing for pretty much no reason. Like James said, it's like the Doctor sort of knows he's in like a musical. There wasn't any story elements at the end whatsoever. Like even when Ruby and the Doctor are going back to the TARDIS and they're like crossing the Abbey Road, like James mentioned from the famous Abbey Road Beatles cover, like the lines on the street are like musical notes, like a keyboard. Again, not really reference. I think the expression in the Doctor's face is like, oh, it's a magical world we live in, isn't it, bruh? But then they just move on. And I don't have a big issue with that. They could just tie into the whole thing. This world's deteriorating because of the toy maker, I guess, or because of the Doctor's South thing. It did seem a bit, I hear you say it, it just seemed a bit Disney to me. It just seemed sort of like a light-hearted finale that just seemed, it just wasn't quite what I was hoping for. I still enjoyed this episode a hell of a lot more than Space Babies, but it just didn't hit exactly as I was hoping it would.
Yeah,
like I'd still say this episode was at best average, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd say average, around there works. I mean, for me, like, I could have done the last 4 minutes. I didn't need a musical bit. But I have hopes enough that Russell T Davies will explain some of these things. Again, what I really want, and it happens, like, the Doctor makes references to it, but I just want him to talk about it openly, again, with somebody, and say, this is not how the universe used to work. It's not the things I used to deal with. Things have changed completely and radically. And again, he can't talk to Ruby about that because Ruby's only ever experienced the extremely strange and radical stuff. She has to explain the consistent laws of the universe that we used to have. She's just experienced strange things like the Maestro and whatever the hell is happening in Space Babies and goblins. So I would just really like the Doctor to have that conversation with somebody. Again, hopefully maybe somebody from a unit. Maybe the scientific advisor, Ruth, who they had around who never really did anything in the 2 episodes she was in. I just would like that conversation because I think it's really worth talking about, and it would go a long way to help rein in things feeling so Disney in a way. Because as long as there's an explanation to things that makes sense enough, I'll forgive all the fourth wall breaks on the whole.
Yeah, and it looks like, according to like the preview at the end of this episode, next one I think is an episode called Boom. It's only like what, a 15-second preview?
Yes.
But
And this is one that is written by Stephen Moffat.
But it looks like it's taking a more serious route. I mean, it's how you say it again with such a short amount of time shown. But it looks like it should theoretically be taking the more serious route. So I'm hoping that things do sort of pick up steam a bit, especially, again, since there's only 6 episodes left in this season. I would prefer this season to not be, on average, worse than a typical Chibnall season. To be honest, I think the Maestro itself already raises the level a bit, but I'm hoping for a bit more.
Yeah, and one last thing before we go, and this is something that I usually would talk about, but just because I've now seen a lot of comments around, and this is one of those things that I would never notice on my own. Again, I don't look at shows in a way of cast actors. I'm like, oh, hey, I recognize the actor, I recognize the actress, I don't really recognize them. But when I look at a show, I'm just looking at the characters on the show for the most part. But if you were to look at this in the more meta sense, there's an actress who has appeared in the last 4 out of 5 episodes of this series. Church on Ruby Road, Space Babies, this episode, and first appeared in Wild Blue Yonder. And she's shown up in very small roles. Actually, now that I think about it, all of them have been speaking roles. But small speaking roles. Obviously, it doesn't seem like she's the same person, but it's the same actress. And to harken back to what we were saying earlier, her name happens to be Susan Twist as an actress name. Now, I don't know if they picked this actress because to like fuck with people's hearts, because literally we have the Doctor name dropping Susan, and then at the end of this episode we have him saying that there's always a twist at the end. I don't think people are insane for thinking that's intentional. Although even if that's just reading too much into it, the fact remains that she has appeared in 4 out of 5 of the last episodes. Even if that in the end doesn't mean anything, that's certainly intentional that they got the same actress. So they're really playing a lot of seemingly meta games here. And again, I would never notice this because I'll just take the actors and actresses for the characters they're playing, not on a meta level. But certainly they're playing around with that right now. And I just thought that was really interesting. And even though I would have noticed it, it's still worth noting.
Yeah, and that's one of the many questions that we hope will be answered over the course of the next 6 episodes. But naturally, these first 2 episodes of this season, Space Babies and this one, has given us a decent amount to chew over. So if you have any comments or anything you wanted to talk about or complain about, well, now is a good time for that. You can always reach out to us on Twitter at Brothers Mahoney, or you could also comment down here below on YouTube. But yeah, that's all we've got. Any final words, James?
Not really. I'll, of course, just say again, Space Babies was terrible, frankly. But this episode, average, maybe a bit less average, but still really, on the whole, much obviously better than Space Babies. And a very, very interesting things, because we didn't even talk about all the much, but apparently there's something in Ruby, some type of, I don't know if it's power or something inherent with her nature, that scared even the Maestro, which even that scared that they didn't understand. And this is a reality-bonding, warping creature. So anything that they can understand, to quote Alfred from the Nolan movies, that's not something to be trifled with. So, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there when the Maestro was trying to take the song out of her during a scene with these kind of quasi-hideous CGI floating music notes. The music that was playing, the Christmas carol that the carolers were singing, or the choir in the church was singing, of the church who's left, was like just playing loudly. So, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, something's going on with Ruby. I don't really know what. I don't really want to speculate because I've seen other people speculate. I look forward to seeing where Russell decides to take this.
But that is it for us, as always. This has been Michael.
And I'm James.
And you've been listening to the Pleasures of the Brothers Mahoney. Catch you all next time with a fresh new episode. Boom.